The observation dome hovered silently above Earth, cloaked in quantum camouflage that rendered it invisible to human eyes and instruments. Inside its sterile, softly glowing chamber stood two figures. Commander Delira of the Zilirian Science Corps and Lieutenant Commander Kale Drain of the Human Alliance Expeditionary Forces. The tension between them was as palpable as the data scrolling across the holographic display between them. Delira was unlike any being Kale had encountered. Her violet skin shimmered with bioluminescent traces of emotion, now flickering faintly blue, curiosity, tinged with disbelief. Her silver-white hair flowed past her shoulders like a fluid extension of her thoughts, and her amethyst eyes, larger than any human's, narrowed as she stared at the screen. "You're telling me," she said, her voice a precise, melodious lilt, "that this display is accurate?" Kale folded his arms, the plates of his exosuit clicking softly. Accurate, verified, and corroborated by 3 independent Earth-based studies. Not that I'm complaining, but I didn't realize stamina would be the thing that shocked your entire damn science fleet. "It's not just stamina," Delira replied, tapping the projection. The screen split, showing comparative data, pulse rates, hormonal cycles, neurological maps. It's the consistency, the adaptability, the sheer drive. We've observed mating rituals across 57 sapient species. None of them show this pattern of physical intensity, coupled with emotional resilience. He raised an eyebrow. Emotional resilience? She turned toward him fully now, eyes shimmering a deeper violet. "Yes, your kind bonds. You tether performance to connection, emotion, even creativity. Most species disassociate. Reproduction is mechanical, efficient, timed. But you, humans, you make a challenge. A sport. A dance." Kale smirked. "Well, we do like to keep things interesting." Delira did not smile. She stepped closer, folding her hands behind her back, clearly trying to maintain clinical detachment. But Kale noticed a slight twitch in her ear, a Zilirian signal of irritation. Or was it intrigue? When the preliminary footage circulated, she said quietly, half the council assumed it was a fabrication, a propaganda stunt. Some even suggested you'd chemically enhance your mating responses to impress us. Believe me, no one's putting on a show for alien biologists. "Then explain," she demanded, voice tightening, "how a species with your environmental volatility, your social dysfunction, your constant war-making, can evolve this level of reproductive endurance. It defies every model we've built for species development." Kale took a step back and exhaled. He wasn't a scientist. He didn't pretend to understand gene sequences or hormonal fluxes. But he'd been briefed, and he knew the question went deeper than biology. Maybe because we have to fight for everything. Love, peace, even time. Maybe that pressure forged something stronger than what you see on paper. Delira tilted her head, her fingers curling slightly. "Another Zilirian tell. You believe hardship shaped this trait." "I believe," Kale said, "that humans don't do anything halfway, especially not when it comes to connection." The silence that followed was long and strange. The city outside the dome shimmered in artificial twilight, its towers gleaming under neon skies. Inside, the air between them thickened with unspoken questions. She turned back to the console. "There's one file, one session we've been unable to fully analyze. Your species labeled it Session 42A. The male subject exhibited metabolic readings consistent with near-death exhaustion, yet continued for another 18 minutes of intense physical exertion." Kale coughed into his hand, eyes darting away. "Yeah, I've heard of that one. You know the subject?" "That would be me." Delira's eyes widened, glowing faintly gold now. Surprise. She recalibrated the display with a gesture, magnifying the vital statistics. But that level of output, your cortisol was triple the expected peak. Your dopamine flooded every receptor. Neural fatigue should have incapacitated you. "It nearly did," he muttered. "Took me a week to walk straight." To his surprise, Delira stepped closer, close enough for him to see the faint, swirling patterns beneath her skin, like stars caught in a nebula. Why push yourself past safe thresholds? Because she mattered, Kale said simply. Delira blinked slowly. "Who?" "The woman. The subject in the recording with me. She wasn't just some test partner. We had history. His voice softened. Pain, love, everything in between. Delira looked away, her expression unreadable. Zilirians do not form such attachments during mating. We pair for cycles. Practical necessity. Maybe that's why our data makes no sense to you, Kale said. You're looking for numbers when you should be looking for the why. There was a long pause. Then, softly, she said, We underestimated your species. We thought your chaos was a sign of weakness. Now I wonder if it's your greatest strength. He looked at her, then really looked, past the sleek armor, past the alien physiology. She was a scientist, yes, but she was also reaching, questioning, perhaps even doubting what she believed her whole life. That made her more human than she might have realized. Before either could speak again, the console beeped. Delira's fingers danced across the interface. A transmission scrolled in glowing glyphs. The council is requesting a full debrief, she said, glancing up. They want to interview you. Personally. Kale groaned. Fantastic. So I'm officially the galaxy's most famous sex marathoner. Delira raised an eyebrow. There are less dignified titles you could carry. He smirked. You're not helping. But there was a spark in her eyes now, one he hadn't seen before. Not just scientific interest. Something more electric, perhaps even dangerous. As the portal behind them began to open, bathing the room in blinding blue light, Delira turned to him once more. This analysis isn't over, Commander Drayan. Didn't think it was. And with that, they stepped forward. 2 soldiers, 2 species, and a universe of questions still unanswered. The data might have shocked the galaxy, but the real mystery was just beginning. The observation chamber was colder today, though Kale wasn't sure if it was the climate control system or the look into Lyra's eyes. She stood near the panoramic display, her posture rigid, arms folded across her chest. Her gaze flicked between projections, comparisons, chemical charts, all of it revolving around one troubling conclusion. Humans didn't fit the model. Again, Kale leaned against a metal railing. Tried to keep his voice light. You've run the data twice already. Any chance we're just special? Delira didn't look at him. You're not special. You're anomalous, unpredictable, problematic. He grinned. That's what makes us fun at parties. She finally turned, her expression unreadable. Fun is not the issue, Commander. Our models classify over 70 intelligent species by reproductive class, neural complexity, and endurance. You are the only species that ranks below average in every environmental stress factor, yet performs off the charts in mating stamina. Kale shrugged. We're full of surprises. This isn't about surprises, she snapped. This is about contradiction. The Varnak live under 10 times Earth's gravity. Their musculature is denser than yours by a factor of 4, yet their reproductive cycle peaks at 6 seconds. 6. Your average is... Let's not quote numbers right now. 17 minutes. He rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, okay. But come on, is it really that shocking? She stepped closer, a spark of agitation, or perhaps fascination, in her stride. It's not just duration. It's recovery, repetition, emotional integration. No other species processes postcoital neurological bonding the way yours does. You bond stronger after every session. It's inefficient. Kale tilted his head. Inefficient to care? To link survival to sentiment, she corrected. Thalorans reproduce once every 3 decades. Emotionless, yes, but flawlessly efficient. Axilans? Pure energy forms. Reproduction occurs through synchronized resonance fields. 0 biological cost. And yet, here we are, he said, cutting in gently. She stared at him a long moment. Yes, here we are. Try to understand how a species is chaotic, is emotionally erratic, has evolved the most resilient mating capability in the quadrant. He pushed off the railing and walked toward the display. The comparative anatomy was a dance of color-coded organs, skeletal overlays, and thermal scans. He gestured toward the human model. Because we're built to connect. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe not even sanely. But we connect with everything we've got. Delira's expression softened a fraction. You think that's the difference? I think you've never seen desperation like ours. Not the hunger for power or even for survival. The hunger to matter to someone else. That's what fuels us. That's what keeps us going back. Not just for pleasure, but for meaning. She was quiet for a moment, considering. Then, without shifting her gaze from display, she murmured, I've reviewed the neural scans from your sessions. The female partner in session 42A exhibited mirrored peaks in limbic activity, full synchronization, voluntary empathy enhancement. That level of alignment is unheard of outside bonded telepaths. Kale nodded. We weren't telepaths. No, she agreed, glancing at him. But something passed between you. More than hormones. Something I can't quantify. You don't need to, he said softly. Just feel it. That made her recoil slightly, a flicker of golden light flashing beneath her skin. We do not base science on feeling. Then maybe science is missing something. The room fell into silence again, heavy with questions neither of them could articulate. Kale watched her carefully. Delira had always projected control, command of herself, her station, her knowledge. But here, now, she was rattled, and that meant progress. Then she surprised him. I watched the session, she said, voice quiet. All of it. His breath caught. You did? She nodded once. I had to understand the subject matter intimately. It was disorienting. The fluctuations in effort, emotion, the endurance. I couldn't look away. Kale studied her. Did it disgust you? No, she said too quickly. It confused me. It made me wonder what we've missed, what we've dismissed as primitive that may be something else. Something essential, he offered. Perhaps. They stood there for a moment, not as scientists and subject, but as two beings facing something that upended everything they thought they knew. It wasn't about data anymore. It was about redefinition. The screen suddenly blinked, flickering as a new comparison flashed up. Human and Xilirian. It had never been part of the authorized simulations. Kale frowned. What's that? Delira's eyes narrowed. That wasn't initiated by me. A moment later, the stats compiled themselves: metabolic compatibility, neural synchronization potential, mating viability. The results pulsed in bright green, 91% physiological compatibility. Kale whistled low. Well, that's awkward. Delira stepped back, visibly unsettled. This must be a data breach. Or maybe your AI is just a romantic. This is not a joke, Kale. No, he agreed. It's an opportunity. She stared at him, torn between protocol and curiosity. You think a Xilirian could bond with a human? He didn't answer at first. Instead, he walked over to the console, touched the projection where their compatibility readout hovered, and turned back to her. I think we're already proving it's possible. Her voice dropped to a whisper. This would break protocol. It could jeopardize our entire observation mission. Kale smiled, but it wasn't mocking. It was gentle. Maybe it's time to stop observing and start understanding. The chamber dimmed slightly as the artificial evening settled over the earth far below. Delira looked out at the glowing cities, her expression unreadable. The stars beyond twinkled silently, ancient witnesses to countless unions and wars and endings and beginnings. Behind her, Kale waited. Finally, without looking back, she said, If we do this, it's no longer science. No, he agreed. It's evolution. And as the quiet hum of the station enveloped them again, the question that had drawn them together, how and why humans defy galactic logic, began to shift. Perhaps the better question wasn't how. Perhaps it was what now. Kale had always believed that certain boundaries couldn't be crossed. Species duty, protocol. But standing now in Delira's private quarters aboard the orbital station, those lines blurred into something irrelevant. The room glowed with soft teal lighting, calibrated for Xilirian circadian rhythms. Organic patterns shimmered along the walls, pulsing with subtle rhythm that Kale realized mimicked her heartbeat. He stood near the center, his boots heavy on the textured floor, while Delira paced slowly, her hands clasped behind her back. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence between them had evolved. It was no longer awkward, no longer merely professional. It was charged with uncertainty and potential. "You understand what this means," she said finally, her voice low and taut. "If we proceed, it becomes more than an experiment." Cale nodded. "Yeah, I got that the moment I saw that compatibility reading." Delira turned toward him, her expression a complex weave of emotion. "Xilirians do not engage with uncertainty lightly. We map, predict, and verify before action. This," she gestured between them, "is not verifiable." "Neither is love," Cale said, softer than before. "But that doesn't stop us." She frowned slightly at the word. "Love is a chemical sequence, a misfiring of neurons reinforced by social imprinting. And yet," Cale stepped closer, "it's moved empires, started wars, ended them, too." Delira didn't retreat. Her gaze held his, steady and analytical, yet something flickered behind it. Curiosity, perhaps even longing. She exhaled slowly, her chest rising in a way that was almost a sigh. "I reviewed your neural maps during emotional climax," she said. "You lit up areas of the brain we didn't anticipate. Memory centers, language processing, even creative function. It wasn't just biological. It was cognitive, intentional." Cale's brow furrowed. "You saying I was writing poetry in my head while—" "Not poetry," she interrupted, a faint twitch of her lip betraying amusement, "but something close, a kind of internal storytelling. Humans narrate experience as they feel it. You don't just live in the moment. You translate it emotionally, even during peak physical exertion." He chuckled. "Well, we are a dramatic species." "Yes, frustratingly so." Her voice lowered. "And yet, I can't deny the data. I can't deny what I felt when I watched you. Not just perform, but connect." Cale moved closer again, slow and deliberate. "Then maybe the data is trying to show you something more than mechanics. I've spent my entire life dissecting behavior, eliminating variables, searching for certainty." She looked down, her hands finally unclasping. "You make that impossible." He reached out, brushing her fingers. Her skin was warm, slightly textured like soft stone, pulsing with a faint bioluminescent pattern in response to his touch. She didn't pull away. "You don't have to be sure," Cale said. "You just have to be here." They stood like that, suspended in a moment that felt far more significant than they could define. The hum of the station, the endless swirl of Earth through the observation dome, the silent buzz of 1,000 data feeds. None of it mattered. Not now. But the illusion of peace shattered with sudden high-pitched alert. Delira's wall display flared red. Glyphs poured down the screen. A distress signal. Unauthorized transmission. Encrypted in Xilirian command code. She tore her hand away and rushed to the console, her fingers dancing across the interface. Cale followed, instinct snapping into place. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes scanned the data, her expression darkening. "Someone has sent a report, detailing unauthorized human interaction. Session 42A has been flagged for behavioral contamination." Cale's stomach sank. "Contamination? It's a political term," she muttered. "Means they think you compromised the study. Polluted it with emotion, personal agenda. You mean because I actually cared?" Delira didn't respond. The screen now showed council insignias, Xilirian High Command, Directive Branch, and worse, the Observational Ethics Board. "They're ordering a retrieval," she said. "You'll be detained, isolated, and reconditioned." "Wait, reconditioned?" Delira turned to him, face pale. "Memory tampering, behavioral reset. It's used on field agents who've been emotionally compromised." Cale stared at her, cold creeping up his spine. "They want to erase me?" "Not all of you, just the parts they think interfere with objectivity, with containment. That's half of who I am." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I didn't report you." The pieces clicked into place. "But someone else did." She nodded grimly. "Someone inside the science core. Likely one of the species purity hardliners." Cale's voice turned hard. "What now?" Delira stepped away from the console, her mind clearly spinning through options. "There's one way off the station, without triggering lockdown. An auxiliary transport built for zero-notice extraction, but it's only authorized under diplomatic clause or interspecies threat. Well, we got the latter, don't we? She looked up at him, truly seeing him, not as a specimen or even a curiosity, but as something more, something vital. If I help you escape, I'll be branded a collaborator. I'll lose my commission, my research, my entire purpose. Kale stepped toward her, his voice low. Or you'll find a new one. They stared at each other for what felt like eternity. The station lights dimmed slightly, marking the simulated night cycle. But neither moved. Then the Lyra did something Kale never expected. She reached for his hand again, not clinically, not curiously, but with intention, her fingers laced with his. We'll need to bypass security, she said, and override the AI tracking protocol. I've broken out of worse. Her mouth quirked upward, almost a smile. I doubt that. Kale held her gaze. Let's prove them wrong. And in that moment, something shifted, not just in their mission or their identities, but in the universe itself, a subtle bending of the rules, a crack in the foundation of interstellar detachment. They were no longer subject and observer. They were allies. They were fugitives. And most dangerously, there was something far harder to categorize, something that couldn't be mapped or measured. They were becoming a story. The auxiliary transport bay was built for discretion. Few aboard the Zilirian orbital station even knew it existed, and fewer still had clearance to access it. It sat behind a translucent veil of magnetic shielding, hidden beneath layers of equipment readouts and false entry points. The Lyra's biometric override hummed softly as it disengaged the security protocols. Kale stood just behind her, pulse steady but his mind racing. The plan was simple enough in theory. Escape the station, reach the edge of the gravitational perimeter, and signal one of the old Terran scout buoys hidden in the asteroid field. From there, they'd hope Earth Command picked up the ping before the Zilirian Council caught them. But the margin for error was thinner than oxygen at high altitude. "You're sure about this?" he asked quietly. The Lyra didn't look back. "No, but I'm certain about you." The words, unadorned and direct, struck him harder than any dramatic confession. It wasn't just loyalty. It was a shift in worldview. For her species, such declarations weren't romantic. They were tectonic. She handed him a small device, flat, palm size, humming with pale light. "This will mask your neural pattern for 12 minutes. Long enough to get you off the radar. After that, you're visible to every sensor on this half of the galaxy." Kale nodded, pocketing the disc. "Then we'd better move fast." They entered the bay together. The transport was small, barely larger than a dropship, but sleek, efficient, and already prepped thanks to the Lyra's quiet planning. Her fingers danced across the control surface, powering up the main core, disengaging the clamps. But just as the docking arms retracted, the lights flared red. An alert pulsed overhead. The Lyra spun around. "They've overridden my access. Someone's triggered a lockdown." Kale's hand was on his sidearm before he thought about it. "Options. There's a manual bypass at the core junction," she said, "but it's in the central corridor. Exposed. Then I'll go." "No," she snapped. "You're the one they want. If you're caught, it's worse," he countered. "You stay here. Prep for immediate departure. I'll cut the locks." She hesitated, a second too long, but eventually she nodded. "Be quick." Kale slipped into the corridor like a shadow, his footsteps light, his pulse loud in his ears. The station had shifted, no longer the sleek laboratory of observation, but a cage clamping shut. Panels flickered with shifting protocols. Surveillance nodes rotated unnaturally. Then came the voice. "Commander Kale, cease movement. Return to designated containment for reassessment." He didn't slow. The AI's tone was calm, but it pulsed with quiet threat. As he reached the core junction, the door partially closed. He wedged himself through, scraping his arm, but he didn't stop. The manual override panel blinked in amber, waiting. He ripped off the cover, reached in, and twisted two conduits hard enough to trigger a surge. The lights blinked. Then silence. Back at the bay, Delira's fingers flew across controls. Lockdown bypassed. Launch tunnel opening. Kale bolted back, but not before the whirring of security drones filled the hall. 2, maybe 3, approached from either side, sleek and armed with restraint injectors. He dove, skidding beneath a pulse shot, rolled and fired. The stun round hit one drone center mass. It dropped, twitching. The second veered, recalculating, but Kale was already past it. The third clipped his side with a spark of energy, but he pushed through the pain, reached the bay door, and the Lyra pulled him inside. The door sealed behind them. "Go!" he shouted. She didn't need the order. The transport shuddered as it disengaged from the magnetic clamps. Outside the viewport, the tunnel lights flickered past in a blur. Then nothing but stars. They burst from the shadow of the station, like a bullet through silence. Alarms flare behind them, distant now, but growing. "Pursuit vessels launching," the Lyra warned. 2 interceptors. 80 seconds. Kale threw himself into the co-pilot seat. "You armed this thing?" "No, it's a science vessel. Minimal defenses." He grinned. "Then we improvise. Together." They rerouted power from the environmental systems to propulsion array, pushing the engines beyond safe parameters. The transport groaned, hull vibrating, but the stars stretched faster now. Ahead, the asteroid field loomed, a chaotic graveyard of rock and debris, dangerous, but full of hiding places. The Lyra threaded them to the outer edge, navigating with impossible precision. Kale launched chaff burst behind them, old tricks from his piloting days. One interceptor clipped a shard of rotating debris and spun out, its signal vanishing in a burst of static. "One left," the Lyra said, "but it's gaining." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Head for the buoy." The Lyra blinked. "We can't lead them to Earth." "We won't. I just need to get close enough to launch the relay." She hesitated. "That could expose you permanently. There won't be time to cloak again." Kale didn't answer immediately. Then he looked at her, calm, resolute. "This is bigger than us now. They're going to try and erase the truth. Pretend we never happened. But if that signal goes out, someone's going to ask why." She nodded slowly. "Then we make sure they can't ignore the answer." The last stretch was brutal. The interceptor closed the distance, sending warning pulses that rocked the tiny craft. Shields flickered. The relay buoy came into view, an ancient Earth satellite embedded into the rock, forgotten by most, but still listening. Kale loaded the transmission capsule, containing everything. The data from Session 42A, the neural synchrony files, the Lyra's own confessions, the compatibility metrics, and the truth of what had passed between them. He fired it. A brilliant streak of light shot from their vessel to the buoy, and then the interceptor fired. The blast hit just as they veered behind a large asteroid. The ship spiraled, alarms blaring. Systems failed one by one. Kale reached for the Lyra. "Are you?" "I'm here," she said. The ship came to a slow halt, wedged between 2 massive fragments of stone. Silent, powerless. They sat in the dark for a long moment, their only light the fading sparks of the failing console. The Lyra turned to him. Did the signal send? Kale looked at the screen. The buoy glowed steady green. It sent. She exhaled. "Then they know." "They'll come," he said. "Or they'll bury it," she replied. He took her hand. "Then we'll fight." She met his gaze. No fear, no regret, just determination. The galaxy was vast, cold, and governed by logic. But somewhere out there, the truth had been released. The truth about humanity, about connection, about defiance. And even if they never left this asteroid field, they had become something no scientist, no council, no algorithm could explain. They had become unpredictable,